Call to order the September 17th, 2025 meeting of the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District, 317 East Hempstead Street in Giddings, Texas. My name is Catherine Rogers. I'm the acting president, and to establish a quorum, I'm going to say that we have 7 directors present, and then we have Director Melissa Cole is attending by Zoom, so we have 8 members here. We have a quorum. Welcome Austin Water and other guests, and Michelle Genghis. And I don't think we have anyone here that we need to introduce. So let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag, United States, stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Honor the next flag, and allegiance to be one day under God, one indivisible.
We're going to go to the public comment part of our program. The board of directors will not ask questions or take action during this item. Regarding comments on items not on today's agenda, responses from the board of directors are limited to factual statements, recitation of existing district policy, or request for the subject to be placed on a future agenda for Texas Government Code Section 551.022. I have some folks who have signed up to speak. Does anybody else need to sign up? All right. Then our first speaker will be Don Aylesworth.
Well, I am.
Mr. Aylesworth, come up to the podium, please.
I got a loud voice.
Yeah. And you're going to be limited to 3 minutes.
I'm the vice president of Circle D, POA, Property Owners Association over at Bastrop. I was also in charge of seeking all the quotes from the well and all the questions that I had. Were you have an existing well? I kept saying yes, They said, okay, no problem. And I apologize to you because I had no idea until I think Jim called me. And, hey, you don't have a well permit. What's going on out here? And my well guys called me, and I'm like, I don't need a well permit. I have a well. And he goes, oh, I don't know what's going on. You call us back. We had no idea it wasn't registered. Now I know a lot more about wells, and I'd like to apologize for the inconvenience of you guys and confusion. We're doing everything we can to be compliant and get everything. I'm just not trying to do anything shady or anything. We're just doing what we were told, and I've never drilled a well before. So I'm a volunteer, and that's all I am. So thank you for your time.
We appreciate you all coming into the line, and thank you for coming up. Okay. Our next person is Mark Wyatt.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Mark Wyatt, a landowner and water well user in northern Bastrop County. I'm commenting today on behalf of Protect Bastrop County Water, a group of concerned citizens. Only in the past 12 days, over 135 very concerned citizens signed up to stay informed on Austin Water's ASR project, and most have expressed their strong concern with or opposition to this project. First, ASR projects inject unregulated contaminants. The Page project by Austin Water will forever contaminate pure aquifers with chemicals that are currently known to have serious health dangers, yet are not presently regulated. So they're not tested, there's no standards, nor are they removed prior to injection. This creates a serious health risk for water well owners and reduces land values for all landowners in the affected Page region, with no available remedy or remediation possible. An example of something that prior had issues is now going to be regulated in 2031 is PFAS. I know you're very familiar with that. It causes cancer. So this is not hyperbole. It's a real thing that happens. Every 5 years, EPA adds new things to the regulated list. Once these forever pollutants are injected through the aquifer storage and recovery project, there's no practical way for a well owner to ever remove them from their drinking water. Secondly, ASR projects will build infrastructure that could be used in the future to remove additional groundwater. I know the draft collaboration agreement says they will not seek it, but it does not preclude it ever. And there is no doubt that this ASR infrastructure will be the least source of additional water in the future, and Austin Water and its management will feel a fiduciary duty to use it instead of the more costly alternatives of building a new water course. Austin Water should not seek or garner support by providing benefits to any public water utility within Bastrop County while the landowner pays to experience all the risks. We feel this is an inappropriate method of dividing Bastrop County citizens. I recommend that this district board adopt at this time a policy position that this would be an inappropriate approach. We recommend that this board publicly and officially oppose this ASR project by all means possible, based on the credible reasons in our papers that you have received. I know under state law, the district does not have the authority to issue or deny an ASR permit. However, the district's official stance on this ASR project is very important and carries considerable political weight and influence. You are viewed as the guardians of our aquifers. Your position and the actions will matter, and it will definitely make a difference. Recommended actions include: first, passing a board resolution in opposition based on the credible reasons outlined in our papers and today. Sharing your concerns and positions with elected officials representing Bastrop County. 3, hiring consultants to independently assess risks. Provide and being a proactive resource for elected officials who may wish to pursue changes to existing laws, and organizing and conducting informational stakeholder meetings for the district's perspective and sharing feedback to the citizens. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Our next speaker will be Sherry Wyatt. Wyatt, you'll have 3 minutes.
I would like to thank the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District staff and board for letting us provide comments today about the ASR project. My name is Sherry Wyatt. My husband Mark Wyatt and I are landowners in the Page area. We use our well water for our home's water use. Due to the shortness of time, I would like to focus on 2 points. Number 1, who's protecting Page land and well owners? Austin Water should not gain support by providing benefits and incentives to Bastrop County stakeholders and other organizations. Austin Water's document entitled "Let's Talk Water" already alludes to this by stating they will support the community by creating a local education center, providing grants, building a park, and selling water to Bastrop County partners. This is an inappropriate method of divide and will divide Bastrop County citizens. All the Bastrop County citizens are affected by this project. For the current stakeholders of this project to sell out the citizens of Page for access to water or a park would be unconscionable. We landowners already feel we have no one truly representing us in this project. No stakeholder seems to seriously try to oppose or stop this ASR project. So who is representing and protecting us as landowners and well owners? Number 2, lack of transparency and public information. There has been a lack of transparency in this ASR project, with Austin Water having open house meetings a few weeks before current stakeholders consider signing the agreement, not gaining public trust. There is a lot of missing information about how this agreement was created, why, and who made the decision that this was the appropriate direction to take for Bastrop County. Now is the time for the organizations who created the ASR agreement to host a public meeting to provide accurate information to Bastrop County citizens and explain how they will plan to protect Page and Bastrop County. Recommendations. In conclusion, we recommend that the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District Board do the following. Number 1, officially oppose and stop the ASR project in Bastrop County by every means possible. Number 2, if the project proceeds to the next phase, ensure there is no official or unofficial discussions of providing benefits and incentives to gain support for the ASR project. Number 3, if the project proceeds, insist that on page 2 of the draft ASR agreement dated 8/4/25 be revised so that all meetings be open to the general public, including the technical group meeting. That's on page 2. And number 4, finally, before any of the current stakeholders sign the ASR collaborative agreement, we request that Lost Pines Groundwater District coordinate a public meeting so that all current stakeholders may present accurate information, answer questions
Ms. Wyatt,
about the
you need to
ASR
wrap it up.
project,
Your 3 minutes are up.
and explain how they plan to protect Page and Bastrop County citizens. Thank you again for your time and your consideration.
Thank you for coming. Our next speaker is Andrew Wareham. Mr. Wareham, you two will have 3 minutes. Not my rule.
There's Andrew Wareham, I'm a resident of Bastrop County. Aware of what is going on with water. All somewhat and overseeing what was going on with the water the last time. Sell water on the corridor, Bastrop County. We're looking at 10 to 12 years to implement and discover this project not work, or worse, has disrupted the aquifer to make it unusable. Contamination, destruction over it, and not even hold water. Point of implementation, we have been extended drought, don't have the water stored in the aquifer in the first place. Don't know that, it's so far out. Or we could have something happen natural to the aquifer, such as an earthquake somewhere in the region, which is common. It could affect the aquifer and its ability to hold water. Lack of trust in the systems charged to not use pipeline that would have access to the aquifer as they wanted back then, and to supplement Austin and the I-35 corridor would be a problem. I'm sure population and need wise would from Bastrop County residents. Why not look into a proven method, desalinization? I know it's been talked about in Texas. I know it's used by the nation of Israel. It's used by other countries. And put a plant in the Gulf of America. Use Highway 71 and I-10 medians to run the pipeline, which could work out with the highway department. Also incorporate barricade in the middle of the highway. You already got access. Maybe even just use it to ceiling and decide which route would be the easiest to get to the Gulf. Or use the I-35 corridor and I-37 corridor lit off on 71, compensate for Austin. But that would create access to water that's not going to go away or not being contaminated at any point in time. And there's so many variables in what they're trying to do, it just doesn't seem to make sense. And this amount of time, realize it doesn't work, and we've spent that time where we could have been doing something. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Harry Wareham, you'll be our next speaker. And you too shall have 3 minutes.
Too much fun that time.
It's brand new.
Hi, my name is Terry Wareham, and I live in Bastrop County, but I'm on the Smithville side of this. So we don't have water that's will be directly under us like the ASR project is. But my reasons, and I'm not as eloquent as these other people, I'm gonna be. There is a lot of confusion about this project. I've been to two meetings. I've also pulled up a lot of information off the internet. And my question is, do we know the reasonableness of this project? What effect will all this testing have? At what expense and cost will be this to the taxpayers? Why would any stakeholder that is to protect our water be interested or even consider a project that has no benefit to this county. And I see where there's no benefit to this county. Or possibly a greater unreasonableness to destroying or contaminating our water. I can't help but wonder if this is a backdoor to selling our water back to Bastrop County when we are in a drought. In the 3 years of testing, so there's no data on this aquifer, which I don't know why there wouldn't be. Your results of sampling is to achieve compatibility to know what type of treatment will be needed to be done to make it similar Austin City water. Doesn't Aqua Water have any data? They treat water already and provide info to the public. Why couldn't they get their data? I mean, why does all of this process need to take place? That's what I don't understand. There would be data from Aqua. There's been oil drills, oil well drilling out there. Don't they have samples of pores? Doesn't the groundwater district have any info? What about the LCRA? Seems like this core testing in a lab could be eliminated if other data could be acquired. What happens if landowners cannot cooperate with land acquisition methods? It's still not clear who signs off on this thing. And what does it mean that the stakeholders may sign? Does that mean that only they are a technical representative? None of this really makes sense. But, I don't have a degree, but some of it seems to be common sense. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for bringing up some good questions. Let's see, Mr. John Seifert has signed up.
For Thomas, that's during the Thomas Church Press.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak on any subject?
Your 3 minutes are up, okay?
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, well then, that ends our public comments. Now, strange as this sounds, we are about to continue a public hearing regarding an application by Rambo Materials LLC for an operating permit to withdraw 102 acre-feet of water per year used for mining
Okay.
purposes.
Did she want to speak?
I think she did.
Oh, yes. Okay. That's Jennifer. Let's see.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I did have a question. Is that all right, or a comment?
You can comment, but you can't question.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Just want to thank you for inviting me to the meeting, and I am
Yes,
going to.
Could you give your full name?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Could you state your name, please?
State your name.
Yes, I'm Jennifer Ann Garcia, and I am a resident of Bastrop County. I live in Bastrop, near the state park. And I just wanted to echo some of the concerns that I've heard here from other citizens, and just say that I did attend the open house hosted by Austin Water earlier this week in Smithville. It was very good to go and talk to some of the employees of Austin Water, talk to some of the city leadership and state leaders that were there. And I just want to say that I think there is a solution for water saving, that Bastrop County and Austin can work on a solution together, but that this treatment facility and storage facility is not it. And so I just wanted to make my voice known and just let you guys know that I agree with everyone here. I don't think it's a good idea, and I'm opposed to it. So no, thank you to that. But I am also very hopeful and excited for the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation and the organization district that you have here, because of the rainwater collection and harvesting that you all do. It's so important and inspiring to see what y'all are doing in the community. And I want to be part of that. And I would encourage the city of Austin and Bastrop County to look into rainwater collection and harvesting as an alternative to this treatment facility. So thank you very much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anybody else, online or offline? Now we're going to move to item 3, public hearing. And we're going to continue a public hearing that was opened last year in 2024. I'm not sure the exact date. You know about it?
Sometime in the summer, either July, perhaps,
Yeah,
maybe June,
last
yeah,
July.
last summer.
And that was regarding the application of Rainbow Materials LLC for an operating permit to withdraw 102 acre feet of water per year to be used for mining purposes. So I am now going to continue that public hearing. And if anyone wants to make a comment on it, please let me know now. All right. Without further ado, we are going
You
to
can close it.
close that hearing. Now, Bobby, do you want to speak to that now or later in the program?
I can do so when we get to the item.
Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, item 4, consent agenda. Consent agenda items are routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion or action on these items unless requested by a board director. Does anyone have an item they want to remove from the consent agenda, board members? Okay. The financial report through August 31st, 2025 will be pulled from the consent agenda. And do I hear a motion concerning items A and C, the minutes and the invoices received under the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Texter and seconded by Mr. Semang to approve the consent agenda minus item B, which is the financial report, which has been removed for separate discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, passes. You want to ask questions about the financial report?
I do. I'm specifically concerned about how the budget,
Can you speak in the microphone? I think your voice is.
it up?
Yes.
I'm concerned about where we are, with the changes that we made for the bonus payments for nice, very nice. We also made so far as getting very close. Also, but we need it, they got into that last year. We're running a negative, we've already got 2. The salaries are gonna be spent before too long, if we keep up with what we've been doing. It's very difficult to tell exactly, what's been paid out of the salary, because it's large sum. Right. The other thing was, in the last 2 months, we've not received invoices. And I do like to see where. Past this month, there was only
LRE.
was it LRE? We've not gotten any. What's the legal side, that kind of thing. We need to do those to
You
make
want to speak to
sure
that? What's going on?
Yeah, the legal invoices were confidential. So that's why they're not in your packet.
understand, but
So-
they have been spent by.
Yeah, so we. All right, we'll do that. Peggy will put that down. The other point about, the first point that you made was.
The salary.
Yeah, the amount, yes. At the end of the day, yeah, what we did last year and what Jim did last year was in December is when we true up the budget. In terms of a budget amendment in order to true up that negative. We've had some expenditures that were not planned. The roof, the new vehicle, for example. So we are in the negative on items that were not planned. And the way we did it last year, it would be at December, once we have all the numbers in, then we can true it up and put forth an amendment to make that negative go away and true up the numbers. So we will have a draft budget for next year, prepared next month in October. And then we'll have also a budget amendment for this year to screw up the numbers.
Well, I understand that's what we did last year.
Yeah.
Why wait until you get in that position? Tell where you are.
Well, there may be in the next 3 months, there may be other expenditures. And so last year we waited till December so that we had all the numbers and we had all the expenditures so that we only did it once and we did it right. So the concern there, if we did it now, is that we still have 3 months left and there could be some other expenditure or something else come in. So, but the finance committee will be meeting starting October, and we will review both the budget amendment for this year and next year's budget as well. So that's a task that we as the committee, the finance committee, will have our starting next month will be.
Where, short we are on the budget.
Yes, we do need to true that up. Yes. We've had some expenditures that were on time.
Thank you, Elvis. Okay, so at this time, we're gonna take up item 4B from the consent agenda that was removed from the consent agenda, which is the financial report through August 31st, 2025. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the financial report through August 31st, 2025. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passed. We'll approve that financial. Item 5, regular agenda. Announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? Well, then we have with us today Austin Water, and they are going to make a presentation regarding their aquifer storage and recovery project. So if you all would like to come forward, welcome. Yes.
Thank you, Board of Directors. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about Austin Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project. I am Randy Jenkins, Assistant Director of Austin Water. And as you've heard before, we reiterate that aquifer storage and recovery is a key strategy in Austin's long-range water plan and has been included in the state of Texas water plan coordinated through the Texas Water Development Board. While we have conducted significant desktop analysis regarding the feasibility of an ASR project, we still have many miles to go before we would actually begin the project. Austin and Bastrop County are in the same state water plan group known as Region K. In that effort, we are all working together to create our region's portion of the state water plan. And as you've been alluded to today, we are certainly all connected by our water resources. In this effort, in the aquifer storage and recovery process, we have really appreciated Representative Stan Gertie's forming a Bastrop County ASR working group with the City of Austin and Bastrop County stakeholders and challenging us to work towards a collaboration agreement. We are grateful in that a collaboration agreement framework to work beside Lost Pines Groundwater District leadership in this working group. We have received valuable feedback this month in our open house meetings and our office hours. Our goal is to begin the next 3 years of field testing with a partnership approach to develop a plan that works for all of us. I want to hand it over to Marisa Flores Gonzalez to deliver more of the project specifics.
Okay. Hello, my name is Marisa Flores Gonzalez, and I'm the supervisor of the water resource at Austin Water. And I'm going to share a little bit more about aquifer storage and recovery. We'll keep this presentation brief though. This diagram shows a picture of how an ASR project would work. Within this proposed ASR project, water would be diverted via the City of Austin's existing water treatment plants from Lake Austin and Lake Travis. The water would be treated to drinking water standards in compliance with EPA's federal drinking water requirements. Then the water will be conveyed via transmission pipeline to a well field, and at that well field, the water would be further treated at a water quality compatibility facility. They condition the water to be compatible with the native groundwater. The water would be pumped underground and stored, and more water would always be added to the aquifer than would be used by the city of Austin. Some points on why aquifer storage and recovery. ASR is a proven method of safely storing water in an aquifer to use later. And this eliminates water loss due to evaporation, which is a significant issue with the city of Austin's surface water supplies. This type of storage strategies helps us to stretch our existing water supplies rather than importing water from other areas. And since it has a minimal land surface footprint, it allows the farming and ranching to continue. During water shortages or other emergencies, this strategy would make water supplies more resilient. And due to prior legislation as well as Texas Administrative Code requirements, regional water planning groups are required to consider ASR for areas with larger water needs. To that end, ASR has been included in the state water plan for Austin to explore since 2016. Just to drive home one of the previous points, in 2011, more water evaporated from the Highland Lakes than the city of Austin used in that year. So evaporation from the surface water lakes is a significant issue that ASR addresses. Folks have asked why we are looking at the Cruiser-Wilcox Aquifer. City of Austin started a desktop study in 2022 to look at 8 different counties and the aquifers within those counties, narrowed it down to 3 counties, the Trinity Aquifer within Travis County and the Cruiser-Wilcox within Bastrop and Lee counties, and then narrowed it down even further to an area off the page for potential testing in the Cruiser-Wilcox Aquifer. This area was identified as best suited to test for an ASR project due to the size of the aquifer and the ability to store large amounts of water, potential compatibility between the native groundwater and the city of Austin's drinking water, as well as proximity or distance from that location to the city of Austin's distribution system. I believe at this time I'll hand it over to my colleague.
I'm Emily Chancellor. I'm on the Austin Water team and our communications team, and I'm going to cover a few things. So we want to make clear that our proposed project would store Austin's water and not take groundwater from this area. The water stored in the aquifer would come from our water supply from Colorado River and from the lakes. We will always put in more water than we take out if the project proceeds. Water quality is our priority as well as yours, and we've certainly heard that a lot in the public meetings we've been having. So before we can move forward, this water compatibility testing that would be done in a lab is critical. We would be looking at the quality of the groundwater, along with Austin's drinking water, geology and chemistry of aquifer core samples, and any interactions between those. That would be part of the 3 years of testing. As has been mentioned, this would be done in a lab and we would not be putting any water into the aquifer during that phase. We also would be working with a technical advisory group that would have experts from potentially Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District, other entities here in Bastrop County, and industry experts. We want to take a partnership approach, and that's why we've been here talking with you all. We will continue to collaborate during the testing phase. We have heard from a lot of folks that Bastrop County wants to have a voice in this project and in the decision making. So in the draft collaboration agreement, we have put together a framework for how that can happen. At the end of the testing phase, the technical advisory group would make a recommendation about whether the project should move to the next phase, as well as Bastrop County stakeholders who are part of the collaboration agreement and Austin Water. And so all of those recommendations would go forward to the Austin City Council. So we have our timeline here. I'm not going to read all of it. I think the key point is that we're very early in this project. We are seeking to move forward with this 3-year testing in a lab that would be followed by pilot testing that we estimate to be about another 3 years. In each of those phases, a decision would be made about whether to proceed. And then, it would be the full scale construction, we estimate to be 8 to 10 years. So we have been working to put in writing commitments that Austin Water is making. And that's been partly input and negotiations with stakeholders of Bastrop County and what we're hearing. Folks, Austin Water is committing to work to protect Bastrop County community and the aquifer by adding more water than is taken out, following all state regulations, establishing a buffer zone around the wells where water would be stored, planning and addressing any impacts to nearby wells, so a mitigation program. Paying landowners fairly and allowing families to continue the farming operation. And we would share all of the water quality data and well data that's gathered during that 3-year project phase would be shared. We also have a proposal for how we would support the Bastrop community. I've heard from folks that they want to know what could the benefits be locally. We have committed to creating a local education center, exploring the creation of grants to support local needs, parks and trails. We also have said we will talk with local water suppliers to see what needs are there and how we can work to provide some water. We also have said we will refrain from using eminent domain to acquire property for this project in Bastrop County. And so that would be part of the binding agreement. We want to work with willing landowners if this project moves forward to being built. And then we just have one other thing that we wanted to share. You all know that we're the water utility for our city. We have a part of our mission that's not typical for a water utility. We actually manage 49,000 acres of land for land conservation in Travis, Hayes, and Williamson counties. So we have staff who have expertise and experience in preservation of land. And we wanted to make you aware of that, and that if this project moves forward, that's something that expertise and experience we would be bringing to be part of the project. And this shows the public meetings we've been having. We had an office hours here in this room this afternoon and had some folks stop by and talk with us. One last opportunity on Friday morning, also the office hours format where it's really informal. We have our materials and our information and our team. Folks can just drop in when it works for them. And that's the end of our slides. And
I have a question. Well, you said one reason we chose Bastrop County and the Page area is compatibility. So clearly you've gathered some data from some sources on water quality. And you need to understand, most of us have wells here, and we just picture water from the Colorado River or the Highland Lakes that's been treated to some unknown level coming into our pristine aquifers and affecting the quality of our groundwater. And that's frightening. And you know, it's not that we think you're gonna take our water, it's we think you might pollute our water. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, the data that we have so far to speak to water quality within the aquifer is from data that has been previously collected by Texas Water Development Board. Some of that data is varying, was collected at different time steps. Some of it may be older than others. And so that's why to verify that data, we would want to do field testing in specific locations that we might be interested in for this potential project to be able to make sure that we have an understanding of the water quality within the aquifer. But no field testing has been done yet. We haven't drilled any wells or collected any water quality samples yet. We would need to verify all the information.
Hey, I have a question. Okay, you refer to in here as the ASR Technical Advisory Group, which is made up of technical people, hydrogeologists, scientists, whatever, that represent ASR, that would represent Lost Pines and dependent group. I've got two questions. One, how do you determine the independent group? clearly your experts are gonna be paid by yourselves, our experts are by us. And the other question is, it says here that report will be science-based and a recommendation from the ASR Technical Advisory Group on whether to move forward toward the next step based on criteria identified in one of your items. But how is this recommendation from the advisory group going to be gotten to? By a vote of the people? I mean, I'm an engineer. We get 2 engineers in a room, you're gonna get at least 5 bids. And I would imagine it's not that different from scientists. No, please.
Yeah, so when we started scoping for the ASR desktop study, we worked with a technical advisory group that was made up of folks from Texas as well as around the country who had expertise in aquifer storage and recovery projects. That technical advisory group was made up of volunteers. We asked them to participate, but they weren't paid. We had a number of different folks from academia and some folks who had previous experience in consulting, but we didn't pay them to participate in that process. We were envisioning that something like that could occur again, and the ASR Technical Advisory Group that folks could be invited to participate either based on their backgrounds in academia or previous experience on ASR project. Dr. Miller was one of the folks who participated on voluntary basis on that ASR Technical Advisory Group channel developing the scope for the ASR project. The second question about how would the recommendation or how the tag would come to a recommendation, we would be asked, well, we haven't envisioned like a vote. We envisioned that the tag members would work collaboratively to come to a set of recommendations based on their professional judgment. And so it's likely they would need to come to some sort of consensus on what
Okay, and those technical advisory folks, I mean, I take it they're going to be, your folks are gonna be briefing you, our folks are gonna be briefing us. Hopefully, folks that are independent is gonna be made open to everybody, because you referred to non-stakeholder members can actually go to these advisory meetings.
Yeah, in the agreement, you're referencing non-technical stakeholders, so representatives of the different organizations that have signed on to the collaboration agreement, who are like non-hydrogeologists or engineer. They could also attend the technical advisory group meetings to hear the discussion and hear the coming from.
What person could not attend technical? Does that mean that the project?
It doesn't necessarily mean that you approve of the project so much as if you're signing on to a certain process for making recommendations about the project, for reviewing and providing input into the testing methods and protocols and results, and making recommendations about how the project should proceed. That's more setting that framework for collaboration and we we have initially included those folks in this stakeholder or collaboration agreement who were a part of the working group that representatives originally convened. And so we have been working on that within that.
Regardless of what the tag recommends, the Austin City Council has the final word.
We would take those recommendations from the TAG, the non-technical Bastrop County stakeholders, and under consideration when they are making the authorization, when they're deciding whether to authorize funding for future phases. And I'll just note that we as staff don't currently have a recommendation on how or if this project should proceed, because that will depend on the testing. We also, are in this current phase of gathering community input, working with different stakeholders like yourself, to consider this collaboration. That'll influence how we move forward, like we move forward with our capabilities.
And right now you're in the desktop phase.
As you completed that.
And then you will go into a 3-year field testing phase.
Yes.
So in that field testing phase, that means you have to complete a pipeline, right?
No. That field testing phase, it only means drilling 2 test wells that will be converted to permanent monitoring wells. During that test, the drilling for those 2 test wells will be gathering small amounts of water to test in a laboratory. We'll also be taking sediment and those core samples from the aquifer and sending those to a laboratory to be tested. But during that 3-year field testing phase, no water will be injected under a pipeline.
At what point do you find out whether there's any clear or confined area? Quickly.
And, some of that will come from, some of that information would be based on, evaluation of data and models that the Lost Pine Groundwater Conservation District has. And the field testing phase will not develop kind of a complete picture of the aquifer. It'll provide us with key information. However, but during that first 3 years of field testing, it's kind of like a first gate that we have to pass to assess that water quality compatibility. And I imagine we have to be working with Lost Pines to understand any sort of physical characteristics of the aquifer that could have impact on the ASR project.
The reason I ask is further. Once pumping started, there was an unbound fault. People on this side of the fault, much more drawdown than was in. So that's always possible. You mentioned these other projects, how they work out.
We did have folks who had previously worked on the San Antonio Water H2O's ASR project. We also had both a representative from City of Kerrville who participated. And then we had folks who had worked in a variety of projects in other states, other parts of the country, in Florida. And then some of these projects in the early days, there wasn't as much science or understanding about what makes these projects work. And so, especially the gentleman from Florida kind of shared his expertise to understand kind of the water quality and what treatment is necessary to avoid negative interaction between the injected water and the native groundwater, which is why we built in there's a lengthy testing and piloting phase into this project, because that's a key hurdle we would need to clear in order to make this a favorable project or optimal we want to proceed with. The San Antonio Water Systems ASR project is also located in the Frisco Aquifer in the very southernmost part of their county, and they have had pretty good success with storing large amounts of water in that aquifer and being able to recover that water and use it to successes. Well, the water system is pretty successful. I don't know if any they have identified wells they needed to mitigate proactively. City of Kerrville has an ASR project, and El Paso has 3 private fees and basins. And and significant, they've been operating those projects for a long time. Oh, yeah, the, Curvo project been running, is one of the oldest ASR projects. That's been up since the eighties or nineties. The SAWS project has been in operation since 2000.
In the draft document, you talk about stakeholders and partners. I'd like for you to comment on what the difference there are, just so everybody knows this particular document, which just covers phase 1B of the collaboration testing that Tom had asked you about. But it only lists stakeholders. There are no partners here. So could you please tell us what the difference is? Because it's my understanding based on this, that if this goes forward, there would be other for further contractual agreements. And that this in fact is this what we're looking at here is a contractual agreement and not a memorandum of understanding. Okay.
Yes, this is would be a binding agreement, that would largely bind the city of Austin to many of the we have made within that agreement, including things like not domain to acquire property for this project. Not seeking the permit for groundwater district, this decision-making framework established by ASR technical advisory, as well as other commitments that are included in the agreement. The difference between stakeholders and partners, I don't have it in front of me, the document right in front of me, but as we were going through this kind of negotiation process, that language in the agreement evolved. The partner language of a vestige or a holdover from kind of earlier versions of the agreement where, we envision that in future phases, folks could be receiving benefits from this project, like purchasing water supply from City of Austin and being provided that through the ASR project or other benefits. The stakeholders and those partners would have more of a vested interest in the project and would be supporting the project. The stakeholders, and that's why we see there's only stakeholders listed within the agreement. Stakeholders are folks who also have an interest but have not yet signed a contractual agreement with the City of Austin to receive some sort of benefits such as provision of water supply. Rather, those stakeholders are neutral in their position on the project. So they have an opinion on the project, but they have not signed any sort of agreement to receive benefits. Rather, they're just participating in the project to be a part of the decision-making framework on the project goes forward.
Okay, it's my understanding that the Austin Water Provision of Community benefits, including education, et cetera, is only available after a stakeholder decides to become a partner. I read that correctly.
Yeah, that's what we included in that language, and one of the examples I gave around like purchasing water supply. We would need to have additional contractual agreements that we would create with a partner to allow that partner to purchase water supply.
Okay, it also refers to, I believe it's Austin Water Project goals set up by the Austin City Council. I mean, the Austin City Council is going to be changing obviously over the period of this. Are these water project goals? I mean, they could be changing too. How is that going to affect things if you've got moving ship going forward?
Language around is saying that provision of community benefits is dependent on achieving a certain project size. Okay. Yeah.
Please take your time.
Okay, thank you. Austin Water Conservation and Community Benefits, including education, climate, and center and water supply, are contingent on successful completion of a full-scale City of Austin owned and operated ASR project size to meet Water Board 2024 goals. So that those 2024 Water Board 2024 goals relate to the potential maximum annual yield that the infrastructure would be sized for, which in the Water Board 2024 plan is a maximum of 44,500 acre feet per year, or 39 NG. And just keeping in mind that that is a maximum that the infrastructure would be sized, where that's not a continuous yield that would be provided by the project, because of course whatever yield would be provided by the project would be made by the amount of water that was originally stored by the City of Austin. So there's also a sentence right after that that says Austin Water will use subsection H below to modify this agreement if the water board goals change. So if those goals change, we would have to modify this binding agreement upon agreement of the parties that had signed on to the agreement. So that would have it would be a decision-making process that where stakeholders signing on to this agreement would be able to have a voice and be able to agree or disagree with modification.
Okay, so if this is accepted in whatever way, going forward on these other phases, you're still gonna have the water quality goals, and goals 6 years from now, I'm willing to bet money, are gonna be different than the goals are in 2024, because you're gonna have a lot more data. Science is gonna move on. Are these things going to be put in on these other phases, because it is going to affect how we're looking at the Lost Pines district and how it affects our
Yeah, we said that, and it's referenced in this agreement. There's also an attachment to the agreement that talks about provisions for future phases of the project. It would be, if this project were to move forward beyond the field testing phase, there would be future contractual agreements, future binding agreements that we would put into place that we would need to negotiate with stakeholders and partners. And I imagine that those stakeholders and partners would be, like Lost Pines, would be, of course, wanting to include the recommendations and the plans, and especially those related to water quality that have been identified in the previous phases. So that's envisioned as kind of moving through every phase of this project, that the findings from the previous phase would be included in findings and recommendations from the previous phase would be included in future phases. But let me just clarify that those goals again relate to the sizing of the ASR project, and just saying, like, if it's saying that, you know, community benefits would be provided dependent on the City of Austin completing an ASR project. So if we decide, again, we don't have a staff recommendation on how this project can move forward, we don't move forward with the project, then we will not be providing water supply for purchase. We'd not be building a local education center here. You know, we wouldn't be providing parks and trails, you know, within this area.
Oh, certainly, I understand that. Okay, one other thing, okay, after this, you've got provisions for future phases if the project proceeds to phase 2 piloting plan. You've got in there to develop a mitigation plan. I know one of the comments that was made, akin to a construction project, you always have a construction bond in case something happens unforeseen. We had requested a mitigation bond. Mitigation bond does not appear. Second thing, it just says a mitigation plan. I wanted to know why that wording, mitigation. Mitigation bond would be, in other words, as I understand it, something happened that bad things happen to some wells and some mitigation need to put in. The mitigation bond will be providing the money to be able to do that. As right now, I mean, Lost Pines has mitigation funds, but this is something different.
Okay. That's good feedback. I think that when we were putting this together, we needed some more time to work with our law department on how that might be worded in this language. The city of Austin, though, we have indicated that we are open to development of a mitigation bond that would be used to provide funding in alignment with whatever mitigation plan was developed.
And that mitigation bond would be put up by Austin Water or the city of Austin or everybody.
Yeah, we don't have those details yet, but that's something that we would be open to working through with Lost Pines. And then just as a note, Austin Water is a department of the city of Austin. So we're kind of contained within that.
So it's the same, it's really the same entity.
Entity, yeah, we're a city department.
Good question. Assuming you proceed all the way to aquifer recovery and storage, and you stated that you'll never take out more than you put in. So you said 44,500 acre feet maximum withdrawal. So how much would you put in that you're not taking out?
So the maximum that we would take out would be established as a part of our authorization from TPQ. As it's Commission on Environmental Quality. So got a ways to go before we, for any sort of authorization, we would be authorized to recover. It's likely that there could be a minimum of 5%, potentially that would need to remain as aquifer and that the city of Austin would not recover. But that's, a ways down the road.
How about 50%?
Yeah.
Okay, for this ASR, it's water, as I understand from meetings, water that would be used drought conditions for the city of Austin, Travis County. Are there going to be other partners that you would be selling water to?
No, the city of Austin has, we would be using this water to meet our existing customer demand. We wouldn't have other partners. The only other partners that would be incorporated would be partners signing on to this collaboration agreement. Developing contractual agreements for purchase of water.
Okay, so that would be, the purchase of water would be limited to the partners that are put in here, not stakeholders.
Yes, that's what you said, because there was a contractual agreement that was expired between the city of Austin and any entity that wanted to purchase water.
But it has to be one of these partners or stakeholders
It would need to be a
in this.
partner.
There's not a drought and you wouldn't be using.
We likely would be storing in conditions outside of drought. There may be some, in order to make sure that they is, able to be operated, you likely have to pump a little bit of water out of wells to keep them in operations. And that's along the transmission main, and so there may be some, water that needs to be kept moving through that. But we'd likely outside of drought conditions, spraying water and saving it for those drought.
If you include the
We have not identified the names of those technical representatives yet. That's mentioned that like, there are hope that the different organizations are envisioning to be members of that technical advisory group, but we have not.
Under your financial feasibility, have you contemplated how you might move the water from Austin to Bastrop and from Bastrop to Austin? Would you have to acquire rights of way for pipelines, or do you have some pipelines?
There, the city of Austin would have to build a pipeline, from our distribution system to, wherever this well field is located. As we are not using the eminent domain to acquire land in Bastrop County, we likely need to be utilizing right of way, or we would need to, purchase land from, willing landowners and, either outright purchase or via purchasing an easement to locate that pipeline, working with willing landowners.
And how many thousand acres do you need to have control over to have this come to fruition? And what kind of legal document do you contemplate getting from people that own that land? Would you get their water rights, or how would you operate on that level?
So the area, the surface area that would be over this stored water zone could be from 3,500 to 7,000 acres. Wouldn't need to own all of that outright. The surface facilities, we estimate would take up about 200 acres dotted across that 3,500 to 7,000 acres. That would include things like wellheads, if there's a local education facility, service center, treatment facility, and things like that. The city of Austin would likely need to own those facilities and the land that they're located on because they're through there. The remaining land, that 3,500 to 7,000 acre footprint, we could acquire easements, purchase easements. We could have that be structured somewhat similar to a conservation easement. Would have an agreement between the landowner and the city of Austin to only have all uses and activities on that property. Leases would remain in ranching leases and things like that. There would be some restrictions on other, incompatible uses of that property. In terms of purchasing groundwater rights, mineral rights, things like that, we still need to work through all of those details with our real estate attorney.
One last quick comment. In your presentation, when it comes to acquiring property for either the pipeline or the area, to refrain from eminent domain, which means it could use eminent domain.
That's not that I see how that could be interpreted that way. That's not our intention. We have made the commitment not to say eminent domain, and I think we pitch it differently in the collaboration agreement. We have committed and a collaboration agreement on page 2. It says City of Austin will not use our land investment.
And now with regard to that statement, how is landowner going to force the city of Austin not to use eminent domain?
This agreement would be binding between the city of Austin and state holders.
City of Austin agreement, they don't need to use eminent domain. That doesn't work. Because I've been through this with the city of Austin. When they built our plant in the ground, and we talked to them about how are you going to get the power to Austin? Or we're going to build power lines. How are you going to do that? Well, we're just going to build power lines. We don't need to use them. Well, let me tell you something. The city of Austin was real smart. They took assignment of easement, LCRA. So the city of Austin build their power lines, LCRA easement. Guess what? That whole line was shut down because they had no right in the domain. Didn't mean. Yes, the city of Austin won the war because they came in and did eminent domain. But sure, made a mess for them. I can speak to that personally because I was involved.
We can probably have about one more question and then we have another presentation by Ellery, our hydrologist. So we thank you all for coming, but do you have more to say? I mean,
I'd like one more.
okay.
You're talking about it coming to fruition from your dump. What if you built in for the growth? You're going to recapture the way things are going.
I think, you know, I almost want to call on back up for the water forward plan into our 100-year integrated water resources plan. And so we're accounting for that very thing right now. There are a myriad of strategies. So I don't know if you want to share some more.
The water forward plan is developed by my team, the water resources team. We develop 100-year demand projections. We look at 3 different scenarios of future growth, of low, medium, and high, and we develop strategies to be able to meet needs across those scenarios. We look at things like conservation, reuse, and supply strategies that will need to implement. Those 100-year demand projections include demographic projections of how many we have, and so how many additional single family and multi-family units we'll have, as well as projections for businesses and entities that will also be using water within the city. So we're baking into our plans all of these demands and how we would be able to meet them. And I'll just say that as, because I've heard this a lot, like, well, the city of Austin only do ASR. This is our only option, and so that's why we're out here, and that's why, you know, there's a lot of concern about, you know, us using eminent domain, saying that we're, you know, saying that we're going to do things and then not doing those things. We can still walk away from this project. We're also working on conservation and reuse strategies to reduce our demands, to again be able to stretch our existing supplies as much as possible. We're requiring large developments to reuse water within their buildings and outside. Tightening up leaky pipes in our system. We're doing all of these things, and we're also looking at other strategies like using, you know, other supply projects within the city of Austin to be able to stretch our supplies. So a big part of our planning is not just one strategy is going to fix everything. We're in a place where we have to look across the board of how all many strategies work together. This is one piece of a larger portfolio for us. That 7,000 square foot footprint is a maximum. Oh, sorry, 7,000 acre footprint is a maximum to meet 2115 goals. So that's the 100-year maximum. That's a 100-year footprint. It's likely we would start.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Austin Water, for a nice informative session and taking all of our questions, and maybe we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the regular agenda is 5C, presentation by LRE Water regarding the status of our district projects. Gretchen Miller, hello.
Good job.
Hey, it works.
Here's the clip. Finally.
Thank you to the board for having me here today. My name is Gretchen Miller. I am an engineer and a hydrogeologist, and I work at LRE. We are consultants to the district. Those of you I have not met. So today I want to talk, I've been invited to talk about some updates to the GMA 12 modeling and some ongoing projects that we have with the district. Among those projects on our list are 4 permit reviews in various stages. I'll be telling you about those in the next few months. I'll be able to present on our analysis of those. We also are working on transferring a batch of data from your database to the Texas Water Development Board. We're working on including, and this is exciting and it will help inform some of these discussions, but we are working on a plan to include water quality sampling in the next round of regular groundwater monitoring that we perform for you all coming up this October. So we're looking at what it's going to take to do that and what our recommendations are. And then we are also working on continued support for the GMA 12 process. And so today I've got 2 projects that I want to focus on. One involving the GMA 12 modeling, and then the other involving what you've asked us to do an economic assessment on the impacts of water level declines. So we'll talk about those, but I'm open to questions on any of LRE's other activities. Okay, so the GMA 12 modeling, I've talked to you I think mid-summer about the first set of scenario modeling that we did for the GMA 12 process, which was PS 4-1. The second set is known as PS 4-2. You recall the GMA 12 is the groundwater availability model, which is from the Water Development Board and has been changed slightly since the last round of development on it to reflect new data in several areas of the GMA 12. But the model itself is the central portion of the Sparta, Queen City, and Carrizo Wilcox aquifers, referred to by that set of emissions. When the last round of planning occurred, we used something called the PS 3-19 pumping file. And this was a projection, what they thought in 2020, going forward, pumping might look like. And this was used to set the current DFCs. And those DFCs are regulatory targets for where the district and its collaborators in other districts want to see the water levels at. An example here is a map of one of the things that these models can produce is a map of drawdown in the Simsboro from PS 3-19. I apologize, this is usually a GIF, so it's animated. It's not going here because it's up to me. I'll try to fix that for next time. And you can see that we talk about drawdown, and this is what I want to show you here. We talk about drawdown a lot as an average over both of the counties, but we really have to think about it as well as values in space. So where in any particular part of the county, we may have more or less drawdown depending on the concentration of the well. So when we think about impacts from drawdown, we have to think in this spatial map-based sort of way as we're considering things. So here's an example of drawdown from PS 4-1 in 2020. We compare their slightly different color scales, but there's more drawdown in PS 4-. Okay, so what do these scenarios mean? So PS 4-1 is the all permits pumping. So in this scenario, all the districts modeled all of their permits, and most of the districts modeled their exempt wells as well. The permitted wells, over the 17-ish GPM gallons per minute rate, and then the permit wells over that. So the permitted wells really are what drive the drawdown.
The exempt wells are fairly small and they're kind of a background drawdown, and then permitted wells with the higher rates are what I think. So all of the permits fit into PS 4-1. This meant that the water levels were predicted at the end of these simulations were much lower, much higher drawdowns, lower water levels than what was in PS 3-19. But we know that not everybody uses their full allocation of their permit, right? Many utilities will use maybe 30% of their full permitted amount.
We have several big permits that aren't doing anything yet, is that right?
Exactly, and there are permits and that are, haven't started pumping or have phased pumping. So the first phase is the lowest, and then they step up and increase depending on district water levels at the time, but they're more than 10. Okay, so in PS 4-2, which is the one we're focusing on today, the districts provided, all the consultants got together and provided best estimates as to future pumping based on knowledge of permits and potential for pumping reductions. And the districts had slightly different goals for this, for where they wanted to see their water levels come out of this. Brazos Valley, Lost Pines, and Post Oak all provided major updates. Fayette County maintained PS 3-19, and Mid-East Texas provided some minor updates. Okay, so a few of the assumptions that we made going into this was that 2020 to 2024 pumping was replaced with the actual historic values. We have records of those. We were able to backfill that portion of the modeling to make it realistic, much like was done in the last round. The current permits started at their current average. So we took the data that you all collect on water use and put that into this model. So it started at the current average and escalated a little less than 1% per year until their permit limit was reached. We also added in, because we knew when permit limits are reached, the DFCs are exceeded. So after 90% of the DFC was reached for any given aquifer layer, curtailment was started. Okay, so once we saw that the model was to approximately 90% of that limit, that's when curtailment was put into the model. And then the last thing was pumping in the well fields provided proportionally. The curtailment in the model, we adjusted this such that the DFCs were maintained. And so this was 35% for Wilcox layers and 30% for all other layers. So Simsboro, Hoover, Calvert Bluff, 35. The Breezo 30. So this is what the scenarios look like. I should also note we extended the model out to 2080, but we can compute values in 2070, which matches the current DFCs, and we can compute values in 2080, which match what we think is going to be, or what we thought at the time was going to be the next round. This date is open to some discussion right now because of some new laws that were put into place. The Water Development Board has yet to fully advise districts on. And from Lost Pines, this is what our scenarios look like. You see these are divided by aquifers. And again, that pink on there, that's the Simsboro, and that is the predominant aquifer that is volume-wise. Okay, so computed drawdowns in 2070. I'm using AGS's slide here. They're the consultant for Brazos Valley. The values in S19, PS 4-2, and the difference in those two scenarios. You can see that the district, ours are very close. This was because we tuned that number, that 35%, tuned that to meet the goal that you all had set about maintaining the DFCs. Okay, so this simulation shows what happens if we are adjusting things to maintain it. The other districts have different goals, and you can see that based on this simulation, if this is what happens, there is additional difference such that drawdown is higher than what their current DFCs are. I wanted to note that I'm using AGS's slide because we found, and the consultant group is working through this, but we found there's issues with the way that we are all calculating the DFCs, or calculating the drawdown values, such that we're not getting consistent results between the two, or between the three consultants. And we are working on making sure that we all have the same assumptions going into that. This is plots of drawdown by layer, only in Lost Pines. And this is comparing, the black line is the DFC, or the S19 run, and then the colored lines are the PS4-2 runs. These very closely track the trajectory that it will take to get to the DFC, and then the same for the Wilcox line. And again, we have a map of the drawdown in PS4. This is at the start, so this matches what we had before. You can see in general in the modeling, drawdown is higher in northeast Lee County and lowest in the southwest portion of the. All right, so before I move on to our next next piece of work, there are questions on the.
In plain language for us, what are your conclusions you draw from what you?
Okay, so the conclusions, I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. The conclusions are that in order to reach the DFCs with the current permitted volumes, going to need to cut back pumping from the current permitted volumes, not necessarily what's currently being used, but from what we said was allowed. It's approximately a 35% reduction.
At what point?
That's at the 90%, and
So that's with 9%, not.
yes. And I can go back and get those times, but I don't have them on here, and I don't want to draw them from memory.
I hope.
So question. What happens to the DFC calculations if the aquifer storage and recovery project for Austin Water takes place?
The drawdown, because of what they're saying about the volumes, the drawdown would be neutral. So
So it should be added.
Right, but these models run at the scale of a year, and presumably they Austin Water, and I can't speak for what their processes are going to be. They're not at that stage yet.
Yeah.
But some aquifer storage and recovery systems will inject in the winter and pull in the summer, because there's less water demand in the summer, or in the winter than there is in the summer. And when they do that on a yearly basis, it averages out, or they're actually injecting a higher volume, so about 5% more. So what would then happen is that average drawdown over the county, over both counties, would decrease. The water levels would increase slightly. Whether or not that is going to be detectable against the DFCs, but averaged over a county scale, think it will be minor, you know, I think it would be a small percentage. But I would be happy to run those scenarios to think about that a little bit more.
Use pumps around the puddle to kind of keep the puddle in that spot or not? Are you just going to pump in and just let it?
I can't speak to what their operations are going to look like. But typically when you say ASR, what you mean is injection and extraction from the same well or set of wells. So it might be that if they saw migration and they knew they needed to extract water, they might put a preference on extracting water from the ones down gradient as opposed to the ones up grade. But typically when you're talking about an ASR well field, you aren't just pumping around the ring, but you do favor the down grade wells. So back to the main takeaway, I think that is that in order to meet the DFCs, the pumping has to be less than what's been permitted. Thank you. All right. So the next set of work I want to talk about does also address some of the economic questions that go into this joint planning with DMA 12. But it also looks at what sort of financial impacts the drawdown has on individual homeowners. Not any particular individual homeowner, but as a collective. What does drawdown, how does drawdown potentially cause problems for people's wells? Okay, so in the project, the main goals were to estimate the homeowner costs associated with water level declines or drawdown. And we thought about this in 3 phases of analysis, or as 3 potential levels of problems. So when we have a well, you see from my diagram here, because of the way the wells are constructed and designed and implemented, operated, etc., we can think about a current water level, okay? And when we drill a well, we say, okay, here is our current water level, and we're going to put our pump below that current water level. That's a fairly common sense thing, right? You can't pump above the water, right? But where you put that pump is a bit of a decision, right? And you don't want to put it too deep because that's more steel piping, that's extra work, it's more expensive, right? So you sort of target it at below that water level, below what you think the pumping water level is going to be. Because when you pump, the water level in your well declines and nearby it. And then you do kind of a cost benefit analysis in your head. Typically, you try to be somewhat conservative about it because when a pump goes dry, it ruins your pump. The pumps are meant to be underwater, and there's a risk that if you're lowering your water level too low, you are going to ruin a valuable investment. Okay? So there's a trade-off about where you put your pump. Now, as water levels decline, what can happen is that the water level starts falling below the pump intake, okay? And then you see that, your pump has problems, or you're not getting water, or as that water level declines, you start having different flow rates. It's harder to get water, essentially. And so you call the servicer out, and the well servicer may recommend that you lower your pump. Okay? And if you lower your pump, then you have service fees and material costs, right? So you finally do have to pay for that extra steel piping, and you have to pay for them to pull the pump out entirely and put it back in, and maybe you have to pay for a new pump. If this happens enough times, it becomes to the point that you cannot lower your pump any further. Okay? This happens when the water level in the well falls below the screen. The screen is the intake portion of your well. So it's slots in steel pipe. Or the water level falls below your well entirely. This doesn't mean the aquifer is empty. It could mean that your well was not drilled through the entire aquifer itself, right? A lot of homeowner wells are what we call partially penetrating, which means they're maybe the first third or the first half of the aquifer. When we drill a non-exempt permitted well, typically we have some fairly sophisticated tools to ensure that we are getting the whole formation. But homeowners don't need that kind of work, and so they typically, will give a good size screen for the volume, and that's what's done. But what can happen then is that if the water level in the aquifer overall falls too low, you end up drilling again. I know that's probably happened to some people in this room, and you know that the costs to do this are quite high. Okay, so for our project, what we wanted to do was look at the district wells that were homeowner wells. And so this is a pretty big majority of the overall number of wells. We had an additional requirement that we had to know the depth of the well. If we didn't know the depth of the well at a very minimum, we couldn't do this analysis. We found wells with pump setting data. That meant the driller reported to the district where they put the pump within the well bore. You see, there's only 99 of these out of the 3,000 or so that wells that we track. So takeaway one is, if at all possible, we should very kindly ask the drillers and well services to report this data to the district and homeowners if they know it. And then when wells are serviced, if that information could come back to us, it would be very helpful for this kind of information. But based on what we saw with that setting data, we were able to make some assumptions about where the drillers in the area were commonly setting the pumps. And so then we moved on using those assumptions based on sort of a portion of the well.
Is there like an equation that they use to decide, how deep to set?
Yes, there's equations that
They should use.
I wouldn't go so far as should here. It's a factor of safety, right? So you can say, okay, I know the drawdown is going to be a certain proportion of based on the aquifer characteristics. And I know I want to put maybe another 20 or 30 feet on that. So there are ways that we can help them figure that out. But for a typical homeowner, again, it's that same equation where if you're drilling a non-exempt well, and you've gone to the district, you got a permit, and all of that, you're really investing a lot of money in it. Whereas a homeowner, can't afford that level of investment, and so has to also, has a lower flow rate, which buffers against some of these issues.
Good question.
There's a trade-off.
What you did then with the pumps for the 99, you made some assumptions and then extrapolated that for the 29.
Yes, correct. And we can, I know everybody's had some long presentations, but we will report to you all exactly how we did that. But we use some equations and graphs to make those assumptions. But I do have to caveat the analysis on that, right? We are working with imperfect, incomplete data. But we tried to get as much of the information as we could on the pump setting, the pump type, the current water level, and the flow rate, based on, again, what's been reported. So during this first phase, we want to ask, well, when water levels are falling, right, below this current static water level, what happens between the blue line here and the orange line? Well, what happens is it costs more money to run your pump, because you're moving water from a lower elevation than you were before. right? You have to pull out water from maybe 800 feet below ground. That is not a necessarily trivial amount of electricity. And so looking at that, we took a typical pump curve, and we took a typical water use amount of 300 gallons per day, and then got the power rate from Blue Bonnet at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. We used all of that to determine the impacts of incremental changes on a typical well. So for example, a water level decline of 50 feet, based on typical use, is about $2.35 in yearly additional electrical for any individual. Now this varies based on how deep a well is, based on what type of pump they're using, how efficient their pump is, etc. This is just one example. And at $2.95, you're like, well, 50 feet of water decline does not cost that much. But if you think about this extrapolated all over the 2,000, 3,000 wells, it starts to get a bit bigger number. So we found the range between what we were looking at 50 feet of decline and 200 feet of decline. That's anywhere 235 for a typical well and 3153 for 3153 at 200. Okay, so for phase 2 and 3, so this is when do we hit below our pump, and then when do we need to drill? We took the water levels from our drawdown impact study that we did for you last year. We used that as a baseline for our calculations, and then we used that same levels of drawdown, the 1,500, 1,500 feet, to see when impacts or how many wells might be impacted. Okay, so for pump lowering, we said, okay, if we get to within 10% of the total pump depth, that we're going to say that's when the pump needs to be lowered, right? That's when the flow rates are going to start noticing you have issues. And at 50 feet of decline, we calculated that is something on the order of 1,000 wells that would be impacted. And that number goes up from there. Now this is the lesser impact. This is lowering your pump, right? But when you think about this in the context of the DSCs, some of which are upwards of 200 feet of decline, it starts looking worse. As far as where these wells are, we tend to see this happen. The purple dots here are the ones that are impacted first. And this happens along the areas where we have unconfined conditions. So that's the edges of each aquifer. Okay, and that's where it happens first. And you can't see it real well on here, but if we overlaid this on the maps of the outcrop areas, you would see the relationship. As far as re-drilling though, which remember is really very expensive thing to do. We start to see, at 500, maybe 200 wells have been, at 50 feet, maybe 200 wells have been impacted. And it's not until we get upwards of 200 feet that we start seeing really large impacts, a really large number of wells. That blue, in the blue there. And, I'm spatially, I'm not sure that we see much of a trend, except, we did include wells that are in the alluvium in this analysis, and a number of those are some of the first that are impacted by that 50 feet decline because of the nature of the thickness of that alluvium, which is in some places only a little bit deeper than 50 feet. So if you were a well that was drilled all the way through the alluvium, you'd potentially be in trouble. But we don't expect a 50-foot decline in the alluvium. 10 to 20 is the closer order of magnitude. Okay, so this is about maybe the 2/3 way through our study. And I'm going to show you what we were seeing now as far as the impacts. What we are currently doing is two things. We are polling local drillers and well servicers and asking them a set of questions on, help us estimate the actual costs. We put a dollar value to the electricity. Now we're going to put a dollar value to the materials and labor for redrilling and for pump flow, right? So that we can give you an estimated number of here's what the economic impact water level is. We are also identifying wells that maybe need to be drilled into deeper aquifers as well, right? So not just ones that haven't been completed through the entire aquifer, but ones that may need to go to an entirely different labor if they're impacted. And then the last thing we're doing is revisiting our impact study and saying, okay, what is the impact of desired future conditions? So those they're essentially drawdown levels. What's the impact at the desired future condition levels? And what's the impact at the PS4-1, the fully permitted scenario? What's the impact at those water levels? And what do the different cost brackets look like at the different levels of the cost? So the takeaway here so far is that there are a number of wells that are in danger of needing to be serviced or have already needed to be serviced because of water level declines, and that this 50 feet is potentially where a number of them will start having problems. A good majority may have issues, and that's a 50 feet average over the entire. Dr. Others?
Is there any kind of, it makes me think, is there something we should be doing, like a handout to give with a permit to the well drillers based on some of the technical information you all are finding out for us that would help them deciding on wells that are being drilled now to try to avoid some of the mitigation that we're gonna see coming in on wells that are already
Mm-hmm. Well, thinking about maybe here's what levels of decline the models are predicting in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years at your location or in maybe different zones of the district, and giving that to drillers as a handout as information. That might be something that would be very helpful.
Bobby, do you see anything kind of scary about us doing that?
Yeah.
Fine. We're planning that.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're planning a well drillers summit
okay,
next month to educate all the well drillers on this.
because this is great information. But what do you do with it?
Yeah. And I think that there probably really needs to be a two-way discussion with the drillers, because we need information from them and they need to hear this information from us as well.
When you're talking about lowering the pump, is there a way that because that's happened. We had good water up here, got a problem, guy came out, lowered the well, and the water's almost at that point. How did you?
How do you
arrangements?
Okay. So the question is, can you lower your pump too far
Yes.
such that you potentially pull in water that you don't want to be pulling? Yes, there is potential for that. The big thing that matters here, well, there are two things. So the first thing that matters is you see the lines on the diagram that are like really close together and goes through the well. That's meant to represent your well screen or your well open area. Okay, so this is the area that is not contained within a pipe, or if it does have a pipe around the annulus or around the bore, then that pipe has slots or holes in it, right? And so the location of that well screen relative to the rest of the aquifer, maybe you have 20 feet of screen, maybe you have 100 feet of screen. But the location of that, relative to where maybe some not high quality water is one of the first things that's gonna matter, because you can sort of use the casing, the area that's not screened to block off that water, you know it's there. But if you're screening through the whole interval, then where your pump is matters. Sometimes what happens is that if you lower your pump too far, then you're down into the sediment that can settle at the bottom of your well. Right, so you see how the screen has a portion there that doesn't go all the way to the bottom. We use that area, it's about 10 feet, sometimes 20, to contain sediments that fall to the bottom of the well. And if you get the pump into that area, then we can start pumping those sediments, and that will cause water quality.
So the homeowner, whatever would need this. How do you make the difference in one well or saying, that's not gonna work, I'm gonna drill a whole new well?
Well, it depends on where your water level is. The first thing you should try is lowering the well. And if you, or lowering the pump level. Typically, we try not to go, further than the top of where the screen is. You see here, there's maybe, there's an interval between where the bottom of the pump is and the top of the screen is. Typically, we try to leave maybe 5 feet, 10 feet above that, so that you're not pulling directly through the screen. You're pulling water through the screen in your pump. The driller kind of has to make a decision about where to put that relative screen. Hopefully, they have more construction information to know where the screen is. Sometimes they do not.
The way you're saying, really, it's the drillers.
That make the expertise. Right, and a lot of them can say, oh, we know that there's bad water at this depth, and they have that local knowledge to be able to avoid that. But it is a little bit trial and error.
I'm just thinking, that happened to them. Lower the pump and back and find the whole. Bit of a few thousand, we're looking at $30,000. Is that irrigation wise that handle?
It's really specific to it's kind of specific to the individual well and what's going on. So it's very difficult to answer your questions without having a specific. Yeah, I mean, it's up to the landowner and the well owner and the driller to make those decisions.
And sometimes they're just tough decisions. They're not always operating with as much information as they need to make sure they are making a good decision.
Well, thank you for a good presentation.
It's a pleasure.
Now we're going to move to item 5B of the regular agenda, which is discussion and possible action on application by Rambo Materials LLC for an operating permit to withdraw 102 acre feet of water per year to be used for mining. Mr. Soleil, this is an situation with finance.
Good afternoon, Bobby Salahi on behalf of the general manager. Our position on this item, as it is no longer protested, the applicant and environmental stewardship reached whatever settlement. It's no longer protested. Our recommendation is to grant the permit. Update.
Do you have anything to say?
No, I agree with Bob.
That's your recommendation.
Yes, it is.
In your packets, you have an order approving operating regular materials. And then we reviewed it.
I move that we approve the Rambo permit.
Second. Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the order approving the operating permit for Rambo Materials. All in favor?
Aye.
Did I hear you, Melissa?
We heard.
Yeah, I said aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimous. Okay, we're gonna move on to item 5E, discussion, consideration, and possible action on Thomas Turfgrass request amendment to increase withdrawal rate without change to spacing requirements. Mr. Hernandez, your recommendation?
Yeah, the recommendation is to grant the permit. It's net zero. One well is decreased while the other well is increased by the same amount. That's true both of the maximum annual withdrawal rate and the instantaneous rate. Ends up all being net zero.
Question. Is the well that has the increased pumping going to impact any neighboring wells in the area?
Not beyond what was already predicted and what we already voted on. See, these are the wells we voted on a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so net, it's the same.
Okay, that was my only concern. It's not going to impact any of the neighbors. Thank you.
Right, well, then, if there's no further discussion, in your packet, there is an order approving operating permit amendments for Thomas Turfgrass. And I will entertain a motion on that order.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion in order to approve the order approving the operating permit amendments for Thomas Turfgrass, included in your packet. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passed unanimous. Moving on to item 5F, discussion, consideration of possible action on application by Aqua Water Supply Corporation for an operating permit for the M3-HT well, which is off Highway 71 up by the park. And
Yep.
Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, this is the M field. This is over on, like you said, on the Highway 71, I guess, on the westbound side. Just by the park, by Bastrop State Park. This is a new well. The existing field has two wells, M1, M2. This would be the M3. It's no additional water. It's still the same aggregate amount. And they did decrease their instantaneous rate request in order to avoid any well spacing issues. So when they did that, there was no other wells within their well spacing. So they meet the well spacing requirements, and there was no additional aggregate production. So the recommendation is to approve this permit. And we've done this before. The board has in the past granted similar requests from Aqua where they're adding an additional well with no production. As you know, Aqua is kind of growing into their permits. They have a large amount of unused permitted amount, and so they're growing into that their permits. And this has been done granted by the board in the past. These types of requests.
So you recommend that this?
Yes, I do.
In your package, you have an order granted request of Aqua Water Supply Corporation to aggregate authorized annual withdrawals from wells in Bastrop County. Do I hear a motion to approve this?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to grant an order requesting requests of Aqua Water Supply Corporation aggregated authorized annual withdrawals from wells in Bastrop County. All in favor? Opposed? All right, it passes unanimously, and Director Cole has now left the building, so we're just operating with the director. Okay, that passes. Moving on to item 5G, discussion, consideration of possible action on board compensation. Mr. Mike Smack, I'll turn it over to you.
Been on it for a long time, about 14 years. I came on. Nice.
Excuse me, can you take it outside, please?
I think the compensation was $100. After some period of time, I thought that was. Okay, maybe that's better.
Yes.
At that time, I think compensation was $100 a meeting. And after some period of time, I thought that was still right. But tried to, and then, the board did increase compensation to $150 a meeting, I think it was. And, the legislature in their infinite wisdom has limited the compensation that we may pay board members $9,000 a year. So that I think you did the math on it. I think that was 45 meetings a year. But I'll be leaving the board here very shortly. And so I'm not trying to give myself a raise, as the legislature does themselves. But I thank you people. You come in, we've been here 2.5 hours or thereabouts. And I know what the time it takes to come and what it does to your family and so forth. And I would ask the board to recommend, and as I think that I'm chairman of the finance committee or something. But I think, and I want to bring this up, I would like for you to say, go ahead when you're looking at the budget for next year. Go ahead and up to $200 a meeting. You know, if get that okay now, then the budget committee will come. But
Do you want to turn that into a motion?
well, yes, I'm asking this board to tell the budget committee that that's what it needs to be for the 2026 budget.
We don't really, I mean, this is a budget matter, right?
So whatever y'all decide to do, y'all can make a motion. Ultimately, it needs to be passed by resolution, which
Right.
whatever y'all decide on, draft up a resolution and have it ready for the next meeting. And if y'all wanted to kick in for 2026, that's fine.
It just that I think that you people that will be remaining on board, I think people coming on board, new people, I think they're worth it.
I'll just give a point of reference. I'm on a committee for the Edwards Aquifer Authority, and they compensate $300 a meeting.
Chapter 36 allows up to $250 per meeting to that $9,000 upper limit. But yeah, $250 is the limit. 36.
Which is what I'm asking for, is the
200. Yeah, you asked for 200.
He's asking 200. Yeah.
Okay, well, I believe Director Simone has made a motion that this be considered, that a resolution be considered and that the budget process consider it. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Here for that one. I think Ms. Campion can report it for us. So there's been a motion and a second that we consider a resolution in the budget process to raise the compensation for each director to $200 per meeting. Favor?
And so do y'all want that in 2026 or
Oh, yeah.
immediately?
Getting in.
Well, I'm not trying to get anything from me, so I'm not gonna be here.
Well, then we'll say in 20.
That's it. That was what I would ask for.
Amend that motion to read beginning in January 2020. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Now, committee reports, Financial Services Committee, Mr. Simang.
You didn't meet, I didn't meet, I think I was on the honeymoon.
Okay, the governance committee met and we, and you know, we discussed this agenda and all these items on it. The infrastructure committee, I got a note from Director Cole that said she had to leave and that see, what did she say? The infrastructure committee has not met. So,
Yeah, we had a Zoom meeting.
On
on the roof.
No. No, we didn't. We have not met that
We
infrastructure.
haven't
You must have been talking about the GM, the other committee. Management or the education
Yeah,
committee.
this is infrastructure.
Yeah.
Well, we had a Zoom meeting on 9/5 Friday. I was in the vehicle when we did it.
I wasn't there.
That was the education. Is that your education?
It was over that truck or over the roof, one.
Well, okay. Let me look at.
That was gonna be on Thursday, and it was on Friday.
It's ad hoc hiring.
I wasn't.
I barely, maybe that was.
Yeah, it wasn't
That was-
infrastructure.
I'm sorry.
Okay, infrastructure
Not correct.
committee did not. Education and outreach committee, Claire.
Howdy, y'all. Take one and pass one. Sorry, I didn't have a chance to put them on your devices beforehand. I was hoping someone log into Zoom. So, outreach and engagement that's coming up this Saturday, we have a rainwater harvesting 101 workshop. We will be at the Keep Smithville Beautiful Sustainable Food Garden Show again this year. Last year, we had a really good turnout, bunch of signups for our Well Watch program and our newsletter. We had some board members come out and talk to the public, so that'd be great if we could get some of y'all out again. That's gonna be on October 4th, which is Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You don't have to stay the full 4 hours. If you want to volunteer, you know how to reach me. Then Vince mentioned this a little earlier, October 23rd, we are gonna have a drillers dinner and summit. It's gonna be from 6 to 8 p.m. I believe that's a Thursday. We will be going over updates on our programs, updates on our policies that affect drillers. We're also going to be discussing how to use our database to make drilling decisions. Yes, it'll be right here in this room. And so if you know a driller, please let them know. I'm going to be reaching out, making a lot of cold calls to people and inviting them. But if you know anyone, please let them know that we're going to be having,
Pardon me.
we're gonna be having that. All right.
Message, Claire.
I'm leaving, that's it.
All right, our program updates. Our rainwater harvesting rebate program, we've had 10 applications, 8 approvals, 2 declines. We officially released 2 of those rebates. We went and inspected those systems. One of the systems was a 2,500 gallon storage, and the other one was a 5,000 gallon storage. So that leaves us a little over $70,000 still left for people to apply and get that rebate. I'm assuming we're gonna get a few more applications after the workshop on Saturday. Update on DFC monitoring well letters. Last time I talked to y'all, we had 4 people accept participation. Now we have 6. We've only gone up 2, but that's better than nothing. And our irrigation flow meter program, this is in partnership with the Texas Water Development Board. They are giving us a matching grant of $50,000. The Education and Outreach Committee met to discuss this policy for the program and what it's actually going to look like. And I'm going to be meeting with a meter distributor next week to see what they're offering for prices. And finally, our outreach policy, the Education Outreach Committee and the General Manager will work together on developing an outreach policy. This policy will determine what organizations we can post for on social media and which groups we can partner and collaborate with. And once this policy is finalized by the committee and the general manager, it will go towards the board for approval. Any questions or concerns? Awesome.
And finally, the management committee headed by Mr. Nick Texter will report.
Thank you. In attendance were all management committee members, also the interim GM and the E&O coordinator. Announcements. An additional agenda item A was added to new business below. New business A, revised LPGCD form 100-200 representing well drilling, operating, transfer permit applications respectively were presented by the interim PM. Forms were discussed and revisions were made. Action item. Forms will be forwarded to EDHM for final review and dispersion to the LPGC Board of Direction for its review. 3. Old business. A. Rules revised by GDHM were discussed and finalized. There were no comments or revisions. An item. These rules will be forwarded to GDHM for dispersion to the LPGDC Board of Direction for its review. And I believe, Mr. Salehi, you are doing that or have done that?
We're in the process of doing so.
Okay,
We'll get that.
good. Okay, the interim general manager reported there were no updates for the ASR. No action was taken. 5, conclusion. Another management committee meeting was not scheduled.
Thank you very much, committee chair. And finally, the general manager's report.
There you go. Okay, so general manager's report. We've had one well gauge in the last 3 weeks. It's our last meeting. It's been a shortened. This was a shortened month. LRE Water will begin their fall monitoring in mid-October, so about 4 or 5 weeks from now. LRE Water will be going out doing their fall water level checks. So if you're on the well watch program, stay tuned. We'll be in contact with you to coordinate that. Drought conditions have started to increase. We are above average in both counties with respect to rainfall, but we are creeping up quickly on our drought. Both counties are predominantly in D0, abnormally dry conditions now. And as you can tell, things are drying up real fast. Circle DHOA, as you heard earlier today, they are now in compliance with respect to their drilling well. They've filled out the Form 100-200s, and that's all lined up. GMA 12, we met on September 3rd at the post office Savannah offices. And I've got a presentation on that later on with more details on the GMA 12. I'll come back to that. Pending permits, we still have, we did the one aqua today, the M3. We still have 5 remaining pending permits for aqua. The plan is to have the number 1 and number 2 there in your list, aqua S12 and S3, to have a hearing on those next month in October. Aqua Rosanki does not need a hearing, but it does need board attention. And so again, we're planning on that one for October. But that just is just a regular board agenda item like we did today with M3, for example. Rosanki is just a replacement well. And then Foster and ER, we'll hopefully get to Foster in November or December. And then ER3 will be the last one that we will tackle. Upcoming meetings, we have a GMA 12 meeting on October 10th. And we have a Region K. I was voted in at my first GMA 12 meeting. I was voted in as the Region K representative. So I got that on my plate. And that first meeting is September 25th in Austin. So let's go over to the mitigation report. I've been doing these the last 2 months. And this one's a little more detailed. I had asked Peggy to do an audit on our mitigation. I remember 2 years ago when I testified in the state capitol. At that time, we had about $250,000 that we had paid out in mitigation. Well, in the last 2 years, we've now practically doubled that. So just in the Lexington area alone, that's the area that's been hardest hit because of Vista Ridge and because of the Tanglewood Graben. That area, we've paid out almost $500,000 to date. There's 71 wells in that Lexington area that we've mitigated so far. And it's still happening. So I'm still getting calls from the pump companies, Steve Missile in particular, he's doing a lot in that area. And so there's still half a dozen to 10 mitigation applications still pending in various stages. So that is of concern, and also Mr. Missile is saying that he's seeing more Calvert Bluff wells now being impacted over in Lexington. All right, GMA 12 update. It's been a while since we've done an update. There's a lot that's been going on in the last 2-3 meetings. Gretchen Miller, Dr. Miller touched upon many of these. This is our PS1 and our PS319. Dr. Miller touched on this. PS319 was from the last cycle, our 2021 DFCs. That's our current drawdown number of 240. That's the black line. And then the orange line is the PS41. As explained earlier, that is all permits at full production. So it causes, that scenario is real ugly. That's severe impacts in the year 2070, over 444 feet of drawdown in PS41. So what that's telling you is that if we do nothing and just let all the permits run to full production, the impacts are immediate, pretty quick. You see that's really steep decline. It's almost like an exponential decay there. And the impacts happen very quickly within a couple of years. So as soon as the big permit, you heard, it's the big permits that drive this, the big Simsboro permits. As soon as recharge and gatehouse come online, the bottom just falls out on these drawdowns if nothing is done. And so obviously that is the scenario to try to avoid. Next slide I wanted to show, this is coming from Post Oak Savannah, GCD. They received a Bureau of Reclamation grant 2-3 years ago. I believe the grant was for about $200,000 and they themselves put in $300,000. So they spent $500,000 to improve the dam, and they called it OpMan. So whenever you see any references to OP-MAN, or OpMan is operational model, that is the Post Oak Savannah local model that they received the grant for, and they improved the dam. Supposedly, I read, and it was presented by Mr. Westbrook, that OpMan is an order of magnitude more accurate than the dam. And what they are finding is that, according to OpMan, the dam is underestimating the drawdown numbers by about 20%. So when you take a look at the black line, that's our current DFCs of 240 feet. That's what we voted on and adopted in 2021. That's the black line. Well, according to OpMan, it's really going to look more like the red line. Yeah. So, and that ends up being about 400 in the year. Well, what Post Oak's been doing a lot lately, they've been analyzing over 500 years, the drawdown over impacts over the last 500 years. That seems a little optimistic to think that we're going to have water 500 years from now. So what I did was I blew up that first quadrant. That green line is the year 2070, and I blew that up. So you'll see that the current DFC of 240 is our DFC in the year 2070. That's the S19 run from last cycle. Well, OpMan says that that's really going to look more like 320. So the OpMan is showing all the presentations that Post Oak has been presenting, Opman is showing that the GAM is underrepresenting the drawdowns by at least 20%. And that's across all the formations in the Wilcox, the Calvert Bluff, the Carrizo, all of them are being underestimated according to Opman.
I just got a question.
Sure, question.
Hi, Elvis. I'm sorry to interrupt. I am asking if the Water Development Board was involved at all with Opman. Do you know?
I know that their hydrologist, Dr. Steve Dunn of Interra, has reached out to the Water Development Board. I know they had a meeting, I believe, in July, where they are trying to push forward Opman to be the new model, or to use that at the state level in order for the state to bless it so that we can use it officially. So that's under process where they're pitching it to the Water Development Board.
Thank you.
This next slide shows the drawdown for the Post Oak Savannah GCD. This is comparing their current DFC, which is the S19 run of 278. And for Post Oak Savannah, when they took all their permits and they ran it full production, they come up with a hefty drawdown of 612 feet in the year 2070. And this is again the GAM model. So you can take 20% and add it on to that. So that's the Post Oak scenario of running everything. Here's the Brazos Valley scenario of running everything. So their current model run is 195 feet. There's some differences. Brazos used the year 2000 as their starting point originally. They've now changed so that their model starts in the year 2010. So that's why their DFC numbers is lower than what was officially adopted. But the main point here is, again, when you run all their models, all their permits, full production, they end up with that's the PS4 one. PS4 one is 512 feet of drawdown. And also wanted to show, so Brazos Valley at basically it seems for the last 6 months, at every GMA 12, they present a new model run. And every model run, they're asking for more and more water, more and more higher DFC. So I wanted to show you one of their proposals that they presented about 3 months ago. They called this the bridge run. This was presented by Brazos Valley. Even they has said that this is not really realistic. They didn't really push this very often, but they did present this, and I just wanted to show everybody. So their proposal here was that we just let everyone pump initially. We exceed the DFCs very quickly. In this scenario, in the year 2025, they had everything starting immediately. So immediately we hit the DFC, and then their proposal was that we continue to violate the DFCs for 2 decades, between 2030 and 2060, even 3 decades. And then in the year 2060, that's when you enforce curtailment in order to get back to your DFC. This really isn't realistic because you've got 30 years where you're exceeding the DFCs. That's not the way the DFCs are supposed to work. And in the process, you're causing big damages to the aquifer and wells, lots of impacts. So this scenario really wasn't very reasonable. It wasn't really realistic, but they admitted that. They stated that this wasn't really something that they were going to push, but nonetheless, they presented it at the GMA 12. Then last month, they presented these runs. Again, these are additional runs that are not really sanctioned by the GMA 12. The GMA 12 has only really officially sanctioned 2 model runs, PS4-1 and PS4-2. But they went ahead and did a best estimate run. And then now their new run is called the Potential PS4-3. And you just see, again, additional drawdowns, and they're requesting more and more drawdown. The other 4 GCDs are, we've already voted twice to keep the DFCs similar. Brazos Valley is the one that would like the DFCs to be increased. The other 4 GCDs would like to keep the DFCs the same or similar.
So it's 4-1 vote?
It's the DFC vote at the end of this, the 5-year cycle, that is a supermajority vote. You need 4 out of the 5 GCDs to pass the DFC. And it looks like there's 4 that will keep the DFCs same or similar. So again, the GMA 12 we twice has unanimously voted to keep DFCs the same or similar. They voted in October 23 and in February of this year to keep DFCs the same or similar. We passed, the board passed, when I was a president, we passed a resolution to keep the similar DFCs as those adopted in 2021. And this results in 50% remaining well-based depletion head on average in the year 2070. And that's the desired future aquifer condition that this board has voted on and decided that that's their position, keep the DFCs similar or the same. So we do not anticipate any significant changes to our adopted DFCs. And the PS42 run meets that objective. So Gretchen Miller, Dr. Miller showed this slide or this particular graph. The black line is our current DFC. The pink line is the new PS42. And by definition, the goal was to keep it the same. And you see Dr. Miller has done that. They achieved to keep the DFCs the same. And as you heard earlier, that requires curtailment of 35% for the aquifers in the Wilcox group. And then there was a new law that was passed that at the GMA 12, we have to identify decadal DFCs in order to monitor the progress in achieving the DFC. That was a new law that just passed. And basically, I just drew the circles at every decade along that graph. And that's going to be our decadal DFCs. That's what the science proves in. Those are the numbers according to the science. And that's what that can be proven by our model and our science. So this is the PS42 run. We believe this is pretty much our final run. So I've expressed that to the GMA 12, said that this is basically it. Like we're basically done. We don't really foresee any additional modeling run. I think we're going to have to go out to year 2080. At the last GMA 12, there was a representative from Texas Water Development Board, and it looks like 2080 is now going to be the new norm. That's going to be the new standard. The regional plans, the water plans go out to 2080, and they're requesting the GCDs, the GMA to also go out to 2080.
All right.
And that is it in terms of my report. Any questions?
Thanks for a good comprehensive look at what's going on at the GMA. It's great.
Yep.
All right. So concludes the general manager's report. We're moving on to 5J, consideration of future agenda items. Do any directors have any items that they want us to consider putting on the agenda? If you don't know now, please contact us before the next agenda gets compiled. Discussion, consideration of possible action on district board meeting calendar. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 15th here at this office at 3:30 p.m. Are there any other meetings? I don't think we need to go into executive session as contemplated by number 6. So if there's nothing else we need to talk about, I'm going to